Excuse me, sir, but what you just said is a linguistic trap. If they sign, they'll lose control of everything. The room froze. A dozen suits turned their heads in perfect unison. Some blinked in disbelief. Others narrowed their eyes, unsure who had dared to interrupt the most powerful man in the room. At the far end of the long marble conference table sat Sheikh Hassan al-Rashid. His impeccably tailored gray suit, reflecting the soft chandelier light. His words, spoken seconds earlier in a dialect of Arabic unfamiliar to most American ears, still hung in the air like a smoke nobody had noticed until it stung. The voice had come from the side wall, not from any of the translators, or the legal team, or even the row of executive assistants silently typing notes. It had come from a woman holding a silver tray of bottled water standing straight, her back to the wall like she'd trained herself to disappear. Her name tag read, Maya. Maya Williams didn't flinch under the dozen startled stares. Her hand didn't shake. She gently placed the water on the nearby table, straightened her posture, and met Sheikh Hassan's gaze. Not confrontational calm, focused, certain. He studied her. The quiet arrogance of a man used to being the smartest in the room faltered for a second. Only a second. "You speak Arabic?" he asked, switching to English now, his tone sharp but composed. Maya responded in Arabic, the same dialect he had just used. "And I understand the difference between intention and manipulation, Your Excellency," someone gasped. A white-haired partner from Landstone Holdings leaned back in his leather chair, flustered. "Is she even on the staff?" "She's a server," someone whispered. Danielle ignored them. Her eyes remained on the sheikh. "What you just said, Will, leave the option open for adjustment based on local compliance," was interpreted as benign. "But the way you phrased it implies you can override any decision retroactively." "That's not a safety clause. It's an override clause." The translator beside Sheikh Hassan looked down at his notes, visibly sweating. "Do you have legal training?" the sheikh asked. "I have a master's degree in international finance," she replied, still in Arabic. "And I worked 3 years for an investment board in Abu Dhabi before returning to care for my mother." The sheikh's eyes hardened. "You interrupt my statement in front of my counterparts, then accuse me of deception? This is disrespectful." Maya's lips tightened, but she stood firm. "I meant no disrespect, sir. Only clarity. You are not part of this negotiation. You are a maid," he said coldly. "Security should escort her out." Maya felt heat surge up her neck. Across the table, someone muttered, "Let her speak. She might be right." Another voice, Robert Malloy, from Landstone, intervened with cautious diplomacy. "Your Excellency, perhaps we should clarify the clause before proceeding, for everyone's confidence." The sheikh didn't respond immediately. His gaze bore into Maya. Then, with a wave of his hand, he dismissed the idea of removing her. But he did not apologize. "You worked in Abu Dhabi?" he asked. "Yes." "Where?" "The National Sovereign Fund. Internal Risk Review Division." The sheikh tilted his head. "You're not just a maid." "No," Maya said quietly, "but that's what pays the bills right now." He didn't smile, but he nodded once, then turned to his translator. "How long have you known she was right?" The man froze. I thought." "Leave," Hassan said. The translator hurried out, briefcase flapping. Maya stood still, unsure what to do now. She could feel her heart pounding, the heat rising in her neck. Was she about to be thanked or fired? The sheikh turned to Malloy. "This meeting is over. We will reconvene when your team has someone capable of understanding the documents. But tomorrow, noon." He stood. Maya quietly exited, walking down the long, echoing corridor toward the staff elevator. She passed a few junior analysts, all too stunned to look her in the eye. As the elevator doors closed behind her, her shoulders finally sagged. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she hadn't let herself disappear, and someone important had listened. Maya stepped out into the back hallway of the Empire Grand Hotel, the heavy door closing behind her with a thud that echoed like final judgment. She walked quickly, not stopping until she reached the service elevator. As the numbers lit up one by one, descending from the top floor, her hands trembled. She clenched them into fists and forced herself to breathe deeply. One breath in, one breath out. She had just challenged one of the wealthiest men in the world in front of a dozen powerful executives, and now she was standing next to a mop bucket. The elevator opened. Inside stood Carmen, one of the housekeepers. Her eyes widened when she saw Maya. "Girl, what did you do up there? Half the kitchen's buzzing." Maya gave a tight smile. "I might have said a little too much." Carmen tilted her head. "Too much? Or just enough?" "I don't know yet," Maya said as the elevator descended. "Maybe both." They rode in silence for a moment. Then Carmen touched her arm gently. "You did what you had to. You looked out for them even, if they didn't know they needed it." Maya nodded. She wanted to believe that, but reality was more complicated. When she got back to the employee locker room, her supervisor, Mr. Jenkins, was waiting. He looked like he'd been sweating bullets for 20 minutes. "You're on thin ice," he said without even a greeting. "I've already got 3 calls from upper management." "I wasn't trying to cause trouble," Maya said. "I overheard something dangerous. I spoke up. You spoke out of turn. That was a multi-billion-dollar meeting." He paced. "You embarrassed them. You embarrassed this hotel." "No," Maya said, voice calm. "I protected them from signing away their rights." He paused. "Be that as it may, Maya, you can't just—" A new voice interrupted. "She stays." Both of them turned. Standing in the doorway was Veronica Ellison, the hotel's general manager. Tall, with silver-streaked hair and a commanding presence, she was rarely seen outside her corner office. Now she stepped into the room like a judge descending into court. "Miss Williams showed more insight in 5 minutes than some lawyers do in 5 months, Veronica continued. "She'll not be punished for that." Mr. Jenkins sputtered, but didn't argue. Veronica looked at Maya. "You're off floor duties for the rest of the day. Come to my office at 3. Maya nodded slowly, stunned. Veronica walked away without another word. At 2:55, Maya stood outside the office on the 31st floor, her palms slick with sweat. She smoothed down her uniform, suddenly aware of the faded stitching on the collar. When Veronica opened the door, Maya stepped inside cautiously. The room was minimalist but elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Hudson. Framed awards lined the wall. A single photo on the desk showed Veronica shaking hands with President Carter, decades ago. "Sit," she said. Maya obeyed. Veronica studied her. "You worked in Abu Dhabi?" "Yes, ma'am." "Why did you leave?" "My mother got sick. I came back to help. Then, after she passed, well, the gap on my resume scared people. They stopped seeing my degrees, just saw my skin, my name." Veronica nodded. "That's the world. But today, you made the right people notice." Maya said nothing. "I looked you up," Veronica said, tapping her keyboard. "National Sovereign Fund, 3 years. Oversaw risk compliance for contracts over $100 million. Yes. You could have walked away today. Let them sign. Let them fall." Maya looked down. "I couldn't. I knew what that clause meant." Veronica leaned back. "You want back in?" Maya blinked. "Back in? The real world. The table. You've still got the mind, the spine. What you lack is opportunity. Let's change that." Maya sat back, stunned. I don't know. I haven't touched a legal document in years." "That didn't stop you from saving a deal." Veronica stood and handed her a thick binder. "This is the draft contract they were reviewing. Annotate it. Show me where the problems are. You have 24 hours. Maya clutched the binder like a life raft. "Thank you." As she stood to leave, Veronica added, "And Maya, what you did took courage. That kind of courage doesn't go unnoticed." Back in the staff lounge, Carmen stared at the binder in Maya's hands like it was made of gold. "Girl, is that what I think it is? I think I'm being tested." "No, baby," Carmen said with a proud smile. "You're being seen." Maya stayed up late that night. She brewed a pot of tea, sat at the tiny kitchen table in her 1-bedroom apartment, and spread out the binder with sticky notes, highlighters, and a pen that had belonged to her mother. Her living room light flickered every now and then, and the radiator clanged like an old man coughing in the corner. But Maya didn't care. Clause by clause, she dug through the document. The same patterns emerged: strategic ambiguity, retroactive language, ownership displacement disguised as partnership. If you feel inspired by Maya's courage to stand up for what's right, tap that like button and tell us in the comments where are you watching this from. You never know. Someone nearby might be watching with you too. Her back ached and her eyes blurred. At midnight, she poured herself another cup of tea and stared out the window. The city glowed beneath a sky smeared with orange haze. Somewhere out there, the world was shifting. And maybe, just maybe, she was shifting with it. The next morning, Maya stood once again outside Veronica Ellison's office. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours, but adrenaline carried her up the elevator, past the polished brass plaques and marble columns, and now to this moment. She clutched the annotated binder to her chest like it held her future because it just might. Veronica looked up as she entered. "You're early," she said, glancing at the clock. "I finished it," Maya said, placing the binder on the desk. "I flagged 10 sections with potential manipulation, 5 with cultural misinterpretation, and 3 with legal overreach that could trigger international arbitration." Veronica raised an eyebrow. "You worked all night?" Maya didn't answer directly. "It's cleaner now, but if they had signed yesterday, it would have been a disaster." Veronica opened the binder and flipped through the pages. Her expression stayed unreadable, but Maya noticed the occasional pausion at a margin note referencing Article 14 of the Foreign Investment Act, another next to a clause marked ambiguous authority handover. "You've still got it," Veronica finally said, closing the binder gently. Maya breathed out slowly, her hands clasped in her lap. "You remind me of someone," Veronica continued. "Your father, James Williams." Maya's heart skipped. "You knew my father?" "I did. He was the one who wrote the emergency financial reform proposals in the 90s. Quiet man, brilliant mind, never took credit." A lump rose in Maya's throat. "He used to say justice was a long road, but someone had to start walking." Veronica smiled faintly. "Seems you inherited more than his eyes." There was a soft knock at the door. An assistant peeked in. "Ma'am, the Sheikh's liaison is here. They've requested Maya be present at the noon renegotiation." Maya's eyes widened. "What?" Veronica stood. "It appears your voice carries further than you thought." Maya entered the conference room at 12:01 p.m., this time not as a server, but as a consultant. Her uniform had been replaced with a conservative gray dress, a leather binder in hand. She walked past the same men who had looked through her the day before. Now their eyes followed her, unsure, some skeptical, others respectful. Sheikh Hassan sat at the head of the table. This time, there was no translator beside him. He greeted her with a nod. "Miss Williams," Maya replied in Arabic. "Your Excellency." There was a flicker of a smile. He gestured for her to sit near him. Robert Malloy, looking more rumpled than usual, shifted in his chair. "We've reviewed the contract and acknowledged that certain clauses need clarification. With Miss Williams' input, we hope to reach mutual understanding." The negotiation began. Maya spoke sparingly, only when asked, but each time she did, the tension in the room shifted. Her tone was professional but direct, pointing out areas of friction and offering culturally respectful revisions. She translated between legal intent and diplomatic nuance, restoring equilibrium to a room that had nearly collapsed under misunderstanding. 2 hours in, the meeting paused for refreshments. Maya stepped into the hallway, needing air. As she leaned against the cool stone wall, a voice behind her said, "You don't belong here." She turned. A tall man in a dark suit, Michael Trent, junior partner at Landstone, stood with arms crossed. "Excuse me?" Maya replied. "You're not part of this deal. You don't have clearance. And you sure as hell don't have a seat at this table just because you corrected one sentence." Maya didn't respond immediately. She simply looked at him calm, composed. "My clearance," she said softly, "is written in the footnotes you ignored." Before he could answer, Veronica appeared beside them. "Mr. Trent, if you have concerns about staff assignments, you can take them up with me." Trent mumbled something and walked off. Veronica turned to Maya. "You okay?" Maya nodded. "He's just afraid of change." "Good," Veronica said, "because change is happening, and it's looking right at you." Back in the room, the tone had shifted. Sheikh Hassan leaned forward as Maya explained how to reword the compliance clause. She used a metaphor from Arabic literature about planting olive trees in soil foreign to them but tending them with care. He listened, then nodded. "You speak with more than language," he said. "You speak with understanding." By the end of the meeting, Both sides had agreed to rewrite the contract. No one said it out loud, but the room knew Maya had brokered the balance. As the executives filed out, Sheikh Hassan remained seated. "Maya," he said, "you spoke truth to power yesterday. That is dangerous and rare." She bowed her head. "I didn't plan to speak. I just couldn't stay quiet." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin. "In our culture, when someone saves a negotiation, we give them a token. Not as payment, but as memory." He placed the coin in her palm. It was old, etched with Arabic script, and worn at the edges. "Thank you," she said quietly. Later that night, as Maya returned home, she placed the coin next to her father's photo on the bookshelf. The light from the lamp caught the metal just right, casting a long shadow behind it. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, and more than that, she felt remembered. 2 days after the renegotiation, Maya Williams found herself walking into a room she never imagined entering. It wasn't the conference hall, or Veronica's office, or even the towering suite of the Sheikh. It was the legal department on the 35th floor, behind a biometric door she had once walked past carrying a tray of bottled water. Now, she was stepping in with a clearance badge and a fresh ID clipped to her blazer. Inside, the room buzzed with the sound of controlled chaos, legal analysts murmuring over contract printouts, assistants typing notes, a dry erase board filled with flowcharts and deadlines. As Maya entered, half a dozen heads turned. Some eyes narrowed with skepticism. Others simply blinked, surprised. At the far end of the room stood a familiar figure. Veronica Ellison, flanked by Harold Keene, the firm's senior legal counsel. "Maya," Veronica said, her voice crisp, "glad you're here. We're reviewing preliminary drafts for the next 2 joint ventures with the Sheikh's firm. We'd like you to audit the equity clauses." Harold looked at Maya with raised eyebrows. "You're not a licensed attorney." "I'm a licensed analyst with expertise in cross-border finance and risk compliance," Maya replied calmly. "I don't need to argue the law. I just need to flag the traps." He gave a non-committal grunt and returned to the documents. As Maya settled into a desk beside the legal team, her fingers ran over the surface of the polished mahogany. She remembered wiping tables like this just a few weeks ago. Now, she was reviewing documents that could impact millions. But the transition wasn't without friction. Hours into her audit, a junior analyst named Cynthia leaned over. "Just curious," she said in a low voice. "How does one go from housekeeping to high table? That's some kind of DEI initiative?" Maya kept her eyes on the page. "I guess when you know what a trap clause looks like in Arabic." The door opens. Cynthia chuckled bitterly and turned away. Maya took a breath. She wasn't here to prove anything. She was here because they had failed to see what mattered, and she hadn't. By late afternoon, Maya flagged 3 major inconsistencies. One clause shifted liability in the event of market fluctuations, potentially exposing the hotel to foreign lawsuits. Another subtly restructured control rights under the guise of flexibility. And the third, buried deep in the IP, licensing implied a surrender of brand usage in perpetuity. She emailed her notes to Veronica, then walked down to the cafe in the lobby for a moment of peace. As she stirred her tea, a man approached. He wore a tailored navy suit and carried a leather briefcase embossed with gold initials. Maya recognized him, Philip Warren, external counsel and longtime advisor to Landstone Holdings. "You made quite the impression," he said as he sat across from her without asking. "I'm just doing my job." Philip leaned in. "I've read your annotations. They're sharp, some might even say aggressive." Maya gave him a level look. "Some might say effective." He smiled faintly. "You're stepping on some very old toes, Miss Williams. Just be careful where you aim your heels." Maya set her teacup down. "I don't aim to step on anyone, but I won't walk around traps to protect egos." Philip nodded slowly. "Fair enough, but in this city, truth has sharp edges, and it tends to cut the ones who carry it." With that, he stood and walked off. That evening, Maya received a message from Veronica, a private meeting, 7 p.m. top floor. She arrived at the penthouse suite, unsure what to expect. When the doors opened, she was greeted by candlelight, classical jazz, and the Sheikh himself, seated near the balcony. He rose. "Maya, please sit." She hesitated. "I didn't know this would be private," Yes, it had to be. Too many ears downstairs. She sat across from him. I wanted to thank you, he said. We finalized the amended contracts today. Because of you, we avoided a future war. Maya inclined her head. I just did what anyone with a conscience would. No, he said softly. Most would stay silent. You challenged me, publicly, and you were right. A long pause stretched between them. Then he added, I've had many advisors. Few I trust, fewer I remember. Maya smiled politely. I'm not looking to be remembered, just useful. He chuckled. Then allow me to offer something useful in return. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a contract consulting work with his firm's U.S. division, a generous retainer, remote flexibility, full access to global teams. I can't, Maya started. You already have, he said. This is just formalizing what you've proven. She held the contract with careful hands. It was more than a job. It was recognition, redemption. Later, as she stood outside under the night sky, the wind brushing her cheeks, Maya looked up at the glowing windows above Manhattan. Just weeks ago, she was wiping fingerprints off glass in those offices. Now, she was rewriting what went on inside them. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time, she had a seat at the table. And she wasn't giving it up. 3 days into her new consulting role, Maya Williams arrived early at the downtown office of Al Rashid Capital's American branch. The building, with its black glass exterior and sleek marble lobby, buzzed with quiet precision. Maya wore a charcoal blazer and soft leather flats. Practical. Confident. She carried a tablet loaded with reports and a mind sharpened by years of silence and watching. But she wasn't just seen now, she was being watched. It began subtly. Files she requested disappeared for hours before reappearing incomplete. Her badge access would glitch at certain doors, forcing her to wait until a receptionist fixed it. Comments were passed in hushed tones when she walked by. Not all of it was overtly hostile, but it was clear. Someone didn't like her there. Still, Maya pushed forward. That morning, she sat across from Amal Farid, a risk analyst from Dubai who had flown in to help onboard Maya. Amal was quiet but efficient, with a graceful demeanor and a sharp mind. As they combed through a logistics memorandum, Amal glanced up. You know they expected you to take the money and fade. Maya looked up. Who's they? The board, legal, half of your floor. Amal smiled softly. Instead, you came in and asked for the source documents. Ho. I don't the symbolics appointments. Clearly, they returned to their work, but the air around them shifted charged with mutual respect. Later that afternoon, Maya stepped into the copy room for a quick print job. As the machine hummed, she heard two voices outside the door. I'm telling you, she's digging too deep. She was supposed to nod politely, not question the Zurich transfer. She flagged it to Veronica. If it goes to compliance. The voices trailed off as the speakers walked away. Maya froze. Zurich transfer? She hadn't reviewed any documents mentioning Zurich. She returned to her desk, pulse racing. That night, in her small apartment, she opened her laptop and dug through archive documents. The system still let her access. Using a search filter, she typed Zurich. One result popped up buried in the footnotes of a miscellaneous assets file tied to a Shell subsidiary. The amount was staggering. $23 million marked as environmental reallocation. But there was no project attached, no timeline, no signatures, just a reference code and a transaction path that looped through 3 countries. Maya leaned back in her chair. This wasn't a mistake. It was a cover. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Should she flag it or investigate further? Her phone buzzed. A message from Veronica. Private meeting. 7 a.m. my office. Alone. Ugh. Maya barely slept. At dawn, she dressed in dark slacks, a simple navy blouse, and tied her hair back. She entered the building through the side security entrance and rode the elevator alone. Veronica's office was lit by early morning sun. She stood by the window, arms crossed, coffee untouched on the table behind her. You found it, she said without turning. I haven't said anything, Maya replied. You don't have to. The system logs searches. I got the alert. Maya stepped closer. What is it? A payment. Disguised. It was pushed through just before the Sheikh's first U.S. visit. Some on the board wanted to sweeten the deal in advance. I only found out 2 weeks ago. And? I've been quietly gathering what I can, but I needed someone they wouldn't suspect. Someone they thought was too new, too unimportant. Maya's breath caught. You used me. Veronica turned. I trusted you. That's not the same. No, Veronica said quietly. It isn't. But Mayado, you know how many people in this building would rather let this disappear than risk a scandal? It's not just fraud. It's betrayal. To the sheikh, to our partners, and to the people who trusted this company. Maya looked down at her hands. What happens now? I need you to finish what you started. Find the full path of that money. The board meets in 10 days. If we can prove who authorized it, we can cut the rot. And if we can't, then you go back to wiping windows, and I get replaced by someone who'll pretend they saw nothing. Maya left the office in a storm of thoughts. Her head buzzed, but her heart was steady. This wasn't the job she signed up for, but it was the reason she'd been called. That night, in her apartment, Maya pored over encrypted files, connecting transaction IDs, tracing wire transfers through Cyprus, Singapore, and eventually Zurich. The deeper she went, the more disturbing it became. Names began to appear. One in particular made her pause. Philip Warren. The same man who warned her about truth's sharp edges. She snapped a photo of the file with her secure phone, encrypted the image, and sent it to Veronica. 1 minute later, her screen went black. A shutdown. System override. She stared at the dark monitor. In the hallway outside her apartment, footsteps echoed. Someone knew. Maya didn't move. The screen had gone black, but the hum of her computer tower remained, a ghostly echo in the quiet of her apartment. She sat frozen, eyes fixed on the blank monitor, her breath shallow. Then, she heard it again, the slow, deliberate sound of someone outside her door. One step, then another. The old floorboards of the hallway creaked under pressure, too heavy for a neighbor heading to the elevator. This was different. She stood up slowly, her mind racing. Her phone was still in her pocket. No service, no Wi-Fi. Someone had cut it. Another creak. She reached for the small desk drawer, pulling it open without a sound. Inside, nestled beneath old receipts, was her late father's silver flashlight. She gripped it tightly, not for light, but for weight. Then came the knock. A single, heavy knock that didn't ask for permission, it demanded it. Maya moved to the door and pressed her eye against the peephole. A man in a dark jacket stood there. No delivery, no badge, no expression. His face was blank, his posture calm, but his eyes swept the hallway like a predator. He knocked again. She didn't answer. After a minute, he turned and walked away, but not before pausing to look directly into the peephole, as if he knew she was watching. Maya waited until she was sure he was gone, then exhaled slowly. Her fingers trembled as she powered down the machine and yanked the hard drive from its case. She placed it into a sealed bag and tucked it under a loose floorboard in her closet. She didn't sleep that night. By morning, she was at a cafe 2 blocks away, using a prepaid phone and connecting through a public Wi-Fi. She sent an encrypted message to Veronica. I was breached. Suspect physical tail. Must meet off-site. 10 minutes later, the reply came. Understood. Elmhurst Library. Basement conference room. Noon. Burn this number. At 11:45 a.m., Maya entered the library. Her heart pounded with every step. This place once, a childhood haven of storybooks and silence, and now felt like the edge of a battlefield. Veronica sat alone at the far end of the basement conference room. No files, no laptop, just a pen and paper. You're not paranoid, she said as Maya entered. I got a security alert. Someone tried to access my drive remotely at 3 a.m. That's not a coincidence. I traced the Zurich path, Maya said. The final signature is from Philip Warren. He's the key, but someone already knows we've found him. Veronica leaned forward. Then we move now. Quietly. You have the backup? It's hidden. I'll retrieve it tonight. Good. Because tomorrow, I'm taking this to the sheikh himself. Maya's eyes widened. You're not going through compliance? Not with the board compromised. He deserves to know who's betraying him. Maya nodded. Then I'll get you what you need. That night, Maya returned home through the back stairwell, her eyes scanning the shadows. Her apartment was quiet, no signs of forced entry. She moved quickly, pulling the floorboard and retrieving the drive. But when she turned, she wasn't alone. Philip Warren stood in her living room. "Well done," he said, voice smooth. "I told you the truth cuts both ways." Maya didn't flinch. "You're not here for small talk." "No," he admitted. "I'm here to offer a deal." She raised an eyebrow. "You break into my home to negotiate?" "I prefer the word intervene." "Intervene in what?" "In your crusade." "Maya, listen, this game, it's not about right or wrong. It's about who survives the fallout. And I'm offering you a way out. 6 figures, a new name, a fresh start." She stared at him. "So I disappear, and you keep laundering money through cultural exchanges and shell firms?" He shrugged. "Something like that." "Number." His face hardened. "Then understand this. The moment Veronica steps into that meeting, she's done. They'll bury her in red tape. And you'll go from consultant to cautionary tale." Maya's voice dropped. "You threatened me the day we met. Now you're just confirming who you really are." Philip stepped closer. "You have no idea what world you're in." "Maybe," Maya said, "but I'm learning fast." She reached into her pocket and clicked a small Davician old recording dongle clipped to her coat. It had been running since she walked in. Philip looked down. "That won't hold up in court." "It doesn't have to," she said. "It just has to make it to the sheikh." He stared at her for a long second, then turned and walked out. The next morning, Veronica received a USB envelope delivered by courier. No sender, no return address. Inside, a note in Maya's handwriting. "The rest is up to you." Veronica slipped the USB into her tablet and pressed play. The sheikh listened silently, as Philip's voice echoed through the speakers, arrogant and confident. When it ended, there was a long pause. He looked up, eyes steeled. "We end this." For the first time in decades, Maya Williams had lit a match in the dark corridors of corporate silence. And now, fire was coming. The morning sun pushed through the glass facade of Al Rashid Capital's American headquarters, but the energy in the boardroom felt colder than Manhattan winter. Maya Williams slid into the chair beside Veronica Ellison, the two women poised against anticipation. Today's agenda: new venture proposals and, most critically, addressing the clandestine payment that Philip Warren orchestrated. Sheikh Hassan al-Rashid entered first, his presence commanding. He moved directly to the head of the table without exchanging pleasantries. His eyes, dark and discerning, passed over each board member before settling on Maya. "Miss Williams," he said in English, voice soft but firm, "your evidence was compelling." Maya inclined her head. "Thank you, Your Excellency." Veronica adjusted her notepad and clicked her pen. "We've reviewed the USB and corroborated it with internal audit trails." She turned to the sheikh. "Mr. Warren authorized the transfer without full board approval. He even manipulated compliance controls to cover the trail." She keyed a slide onto the display behind her, showing wire routes through Cyprus, Singapore, then Zurich. There was a collective murmur. Maya noticed half the room stiffened, particularly Philip's legal counterpart, who looked pale. A golf partner piped up, voice measured. "If this happened before my arrival, why didn't it come up earlier?" Veronica responded without hesitation. "Because Mr. Warren removed those transactions from standard reporting. Internal audit flagged minor inconsistencies, but Warren denied access." She turned back to Maya. That's when Maya began tracing it through encrypted logs. The room swallowed hard. Sheikh Hassan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "I entrusted my American operations to experienced professionals. I did not expect deception from within." Silence filled the space. "I want an independent inquiry, and until that completes, Mr. Warren must step down from compliance duties." Even from where she sat, Maya could feel tension crackling. Philip Warren sat slack-shouldered but unbowed. Veronica clicked again. "Additionally, Miss Williams' workflow revealed equity provisions in upcoming venture contracts that mirrored yesterday's trap clause vague language that could grant override authority retroactively." She paused. "There are 2 new proposals pending your signature, Sheikh. Might we have your permission to send them to Maya for review before final signing?" Sheikh Hassan's gaze sharpened. He turned to Maya. "Are you comfortable with that?" She swallowed. This was more than what she bargained for. "Yes, Your Excellency. I'd be honored to help." A Gulf partner nodded slowly. Then, it is done. A murmur of approval rose from the Western board members. Robert Malloy cleared his throat. Maya's participation here. It signals a new level of transparency. I support it. The sheikh inclined his head. Very well. Let it be known. No document reaches my desk without her review. As the meeting transitioned to new venture discussions, Maya felt both exhilarated and haunted. She introduced herself to Dr. Amal Farid, who had flown in again. They exchanged a silent understanding. Strength in partnership was growing. By midday, Maya was led to a small meeting room overlooking the river. Spread before her were digital drafts of 2 contracts, one for an energy tech joint venture, the other for a supply chain partnership with a Southeast Asian firm. Maya clicked open the first. The preamble looked conventional enough, but she quickly noticed a familiar phrase: contingent override based on regulatory realignment. She tapped the tracker and typed a note. Requires clear definition of realignment. Suggest amendment to specify jurisdiction and time limit. In the second draft, her eyes caught a section on IP licensing. Licensor grants exclusive rights in perpetuity as long as operational sustainability criteria are met. Operational sustainability, who defined it? What metrics? Perpetuity gave too much power to one party. She flagged. Define sustainability metrics. Limit term to 5 years. Require annual joint review. Her fingers hovered over the send button. She paused and then hit it. In that moment, she reminded herself, this was more than editing legal wording, it was preserving fairness. At 3 p.m., Veronica walked in, coffee in hand. Some board members questioned your suggestions, Philip especially. He called them unnecessary red tape. Maya pressed her pen. I'm not here to slow things, just to ensure clarity. Veronica smiled. That's all that matters. She called it red tape, said a firm voice beside her. Angelina Park, a senior compliance officer, stepped in. Someone needs to ask, why do these clauses keep surfacing in new deals? Maya nodded at Angelina. That's exactly why I flagged them. Angelina glanced at the screen, then at Maya. Good work. The afternoon progressed with Maya's comments rolling back to legal counsel. She was invited to speak up. She explained cultural differences from Gulf legal traditions, whose vague phraseology sometimes masks discretionary powers. She emphasized that in a Western corporate environment, transparency needed specificity. Each phrase she offered was met with nods from Gulf advisors and cautious curiosity from American counsel. At 5:30, the meeting ended. Veronica and Maya left together. Outside, Veronica slipped an arm through Maya's. You built a bridge today, but the foundation is still shaky. Maya exhaled. I saw the same issue in the first contract. I just didn't expect it to be systematic. Veronica shook her head. This goes deeper. But we'll patch each leak, one clause at a time. At her apartment that evening, Maya prepared dinner: a bowl of lentil soup, crusty bread, herbal tea. She turned on soft NPR background noise. The news reported low market volatility. Yet her world was volatile enough. Maya poured soup into 2 bowls, then hesitated, then ate half of each. She sipped tea and watched the city lights flicker. She thought of her father's briefcase, the one she kept tucked under her bedand, how he once said, "A bridge doesn't protect you from the storm. It lets you cross it." Tomorrow, there would be more decks, more clauses. But tonight, she crossed 1 more mile of the journey. Because a bridge, once built, must stand. By the 3rd week of Maya Williams' consulting tenure, something shifted, not just in the walls of Al Rashid Capital but within Maya herself. She no longer walked through the building unnoticed. Security guards greeted her with measured nods. Junior analysts whispered her name with equal parts curiosity and caution. Executives, once dismissive, now regarded her as a necessary piece of a dangerous puzzle. But with respect came pressure. Early Tuesday, Maya arrived at her temporary office to find a thick manila envelope waiting on her desk. No name, no stamp, just the words, "For your eyes only, Legacy Holdings." She shut the door, pulled the blinds, and opened the envelope. Inside were scanned copies of transaction ledgers from a subsidiary she didn't recognize, Legacy Holdings LLC, registered in Delaware but rerouted through Cayman accounts. There were repeated payments labeled infrastructure facilitation, totaling over $40 million in the last fiscal year. Each line item was vague. Some referenced offshore vendors, others were marked asset relocation, confidential. But one note, buried at the bottom of the second page, stood out. Q4 2023, Environmental Justice Initiative, redirected. Redirected? The word echoed. She dug deeper. Pulling up internal memos stored in archived email chains, Maya discovered that the Environmental Justice Initiative had been part of a public partnership approved for supporting water infrastructure in Native American reservations across the Midwest. Yet, the funds had never arrived. Instead, the redirection flowed to a private equity firm owned with ties to Philip Warren's college roommate. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just corporate fraud. It was moral theft money stolen from communities with poisoned wells and crumbling pipelines. She needed verification. Maya emailed Angelina Park and Amal Farid for a discreet meeting in the back cafe of the building. That afternoon, the three women sat in a booth tucked behind a potted fern wall. Maya slid the pages across. This came anonymously. Legacy Holdings. Cayman reroutes. 40 million. It should have funded tribal clean water. Amal scanned the pages, her eyes narrowing. That firm, I've seen it mentioned in our London files. Angelina leaned forward. You said redirected? To where? A shell firm in Nevada, owned by Northbriar Equity. Guess who sits on their advisory board? Warren. They both answered in unison. Amal whispered. He's more embedded than we thought. Angelina bit her lip. We need this on record. We go to the Sheikh again. Maya shook her head. Not yet. If we go now, Warren will bury it before we finish connecting the trail. We need hard, irrefutable evidence, not just traces. Amal tapped her pen. There's a retired financial controller, Elijah Rowe. He used to handle internal audits before he got pushed out during a restructuring. He might have originals. Maya nodded slowly. Can you reach him? Angelina offered. I'll try. He trusted me once. 3 days later, Maya, Amal, and Angelina sat in Elijah Rowe's modest townhouse in Queens. He was in his 70s, weathered, white beard neatly trimmed, and wore a thick cable-knit sweater. His home smelled of lemon polish and old paper. I knew this day would come, Elijah said, pouring tea. They thought I was too old, too slow. Truth is, I kept copies, not for revenge, for justice. He disappeared into a back room and returned with a dusty lockbox. Inside were ledgers, emails, and internal memos dating back 5 years, all tied to Legacy Holdings and the EJI funding. This is your smoking gun, he said. But be careful. Philip Warren isn't alone. Some of the names you'll find, they go higher than board level. Maya opened one ledger and felt a chill. Among the names was someone unexpected. Harold Covington, the firm's legal counsel and a personal friend of Sheikh Hassan's. Her heart pounded. If we name him, it'll shake everything. Elijah looked her in the eye. Then shake it, or this all happens again. That night, Maya reviewed every document. She connected timelines, flagged key transfers, and mapped the connections between Legacy Holdings, Northbriar Equity, and compromised accounts. She built a master file encrypted and backed up on 3 separate drives. In her notes, she labeled the final folder, The Unseen Ledger. At dawn, Maya sent one copy to Veronica, another to Amal and Angelina, and one to a secure external legal advisor that Elijah recommended, a former federal prosecutor turned corporate ethics consultant. Then, she waited. By 10 a.m., she received a reply from Veronica. This will burn down the house. Are you ready? Maya typed back. The house was already on fire. We're just ringing the alarm. She knew what came next. At the following board meeting, Veronica and Maya would present their findings in full. There would be no denials this time. They had signatures, timestamps, email chains, and Elijah's sworn affidavit. But more than that, they had truth. Not just corporate truth, moral truth. The kind that shines light into corners people hoped would stay dark. As Maya sat at her desk, sipping bitter black coffee, she looked out at the skyline. The wind rushed through the city, brushing against glass towers and forgotten alleys. Somewhere below, a child drank from a faucet in a reservation school water that might still be unsafe. But perhaps not for long, because someone had finally read the ledger. The boardroom was colder than usual, not in temperature, but in tone. Silence buzzed louder than speech, and the long mahogany table stretched between the accused and the accusers like a chasm. Maya Williams sat with her back straight, her laptop open, her fingers resting calmly on the keyboard. Veronica Ellison was beside her, exuding quiet fury. A folder of paper documents fanned in front of her like a deck of truth. Across the table, Philip Warren sat tight-lipped, a muscle twitching beneath his jaw. Harold Covington, the firm's legal counsel and until now untouchable, glanced between them with a forced smile, the kind worn by men who know the fall is coming but are still praying for a rope. Sheikh Hassan arrived last, flanked by 2 Gulf partners and his translator. He gave a brief nod, then took his seat at the head. "Proceed," he said, his voice low. Veronica began. "Your Excellency, what we are about to present is not just a financial discrepancy. It's systemic, it's deliberate, and it's a betrayal of everything your foundation was meant to stand for." She gestured toward Maya. Maya clicked a button. The monitor lit up behind her with a flowchart of transactions starting with Legacy Holdings, branching into Northbriar Equity, then scattering like spores into offshore accounts, all tied back to projects originally intended for humanitarian and environmental aid. "For 3 years," Maya began, her voice steady, "these funds were redirected, projects approved in good faith, including the Environmental Justice Initiative, were stripped of their allocated finances. Over $40 million vanished through layers of shell firms. We traced the IP signatures, we matched login credentials, and we obtained sworn testimony from Elijah Rowe, a former controller forced into early retirement after questioning these transactions." Veronica handed a printed affidavit down the table. A few board members leaned in, brows tightening. Maya continued. "The misdirection was intentional. Mr. Warren approved payments marked as infrastructure facilitation, often weeks before public votes. The oversight was not a clerical error, it was orchestrated." Philip opened his mouth, but Veronica raised a hand. "You'll have your turn." Sheikh Hassan gestuurd. "Let her finish." Maya clicked again. Another slide appeared, this one showing email correspondences. "Furthermore," she said, "we found communications between Mr. Warren and Harold Covington discussing contingency protections should this come to light. Language included phrases like redirect public outrage, utilize procedural delays, and, in one case, neutralize whistle potential." Harold's smile cracked. "This is taken out of context." Sheikh Hassan turned to him. "Is it your voice in these emails?" Harold shifted. "I cannot confirm without seeing the full threads." Veronica handed him a printout. "You wrote them. The 12th of June, the 3rd of July, the 19th of August." Maya interjected. "The date of the redirection aligns with the board's final sign-off on the EJI. You leveraged trust for gain." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the sheikh leaned forward. "Mr. Warren, Mr. Covington, do you deny these findings?" Philip stared at the screen, defiance flickering in his eyes. "We acted in the firm's best interest, diversifying assets, optimizing capital flow. By stealing humanitarian funds," one Gulf partner hissed. Harold tried a different tactic. "The legal structure allows for flexible allocations within subsidiaries." "Do not insult me," the sheikh snapped, his calm shattered. "We fund these initiatives to restore what others have broken, to empower what has been ignored, not to enrich charlatans in suits." He stood. "In accordance with Clause 7.4 of the Board Governance Charter, I am enacting emergency oversight and immediate suspension of both Mr. Warren and Mr. Covington. Their access to internal systems is revoked, pending formal investigation." A flurry of action followed. IT personnel entered the room. Philip's laptop was taken. Harold's phone was confiscated. Maya watched them both shrink. Not physically, but spiritually. The curtain had dropped. The act was over. Veronica whispered to Maya, "We did it." But Maya wasn't celebrating yet. Her eyes swept the room. She knew enough to recognize that snakes don't always slither out in the open. Some stay quiet and wait. After the meeting, the sheikh requested a private word with Maya. Inside his personal office, a sun-drenched suite lined with books and Middle Eastern art, poured her tea himself. "You have served this firm with more integrity in weeks than some have in years," he said. "Why did you fight so hard?" Maya hesitated. Because I've lived in places where justice was an afterthought, and I won't let it stay that way if I can help it. The sheikh nodded slowly. There is strength in that pain. I see it. He handed her a small envelope. My team will offer you a permanent advisory position. Full clearance, equal voice. Maya opened the envelope but didn't look inside. Thank you, but I need time to think. I respect that. That night, Maya sat on her fire escape, the city glowing beneath her. The air was cool. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. She looked at the envelope again, then set it aside. Her father's old compass sat beside her, the same one he carried through civil rights marches. This victory wasn't just hers. It belonged to every voice that had been ignored, every child without clean water, every worker whose ethics had been drowned by profit. And as she looked into the night, Maya knew this was just the beginning. The reckoning was here. And the ledger was no longer unseen. The following morning, the hallways of Al-Rashid Capital buzzed with an energy that was neither relief nor celebration, it was uncertainty. Philip Warren and Harold Covington were gone, suspended indefinitely. Their names no longer appeared in the system directory, their offices locked down and sealed for audit. Yet power, Maya knew, never just disappears. It shifts, it waits, it searches for cracks. Maya walked into the 24th floor conference room for an unscheduled internal compliance meeting. At the head of the table sat Dr. Amal Farid, who had assumed interim oversight of internal risk management. Next to her were Veronica, Angelina, and two newly introduced partners, one from Dubai, the other from Houston. Amal started the session with clarity. We've removed two of the firm's most senior figures in less than 2 weeks. That creates a vacuum. And vacuums attract opportunists. Maya nodded. We can't allow the structural weaknesses they exploited to remain. If we only remove faces but keep the systems that protected them, we've done nothing. Veronica added. We need to rebuild with transparency from the inside out. That means redefining oversight processes. Real compliance, no performative. The Dubai partner, a lean man in a tailored navy suit, leaned forward. And it means some uncomfortable conversations. There are still stakeholders who supported Warren and Covington. The Houston partner, older and more grounded, spoke softly. People don't betray institutions by accident. They do it because they think no one's watching. Maya tapped her notebook. Then let's make watching a policy, not a reaction. By noon, the team had sketched the first draft of a new compliance framework. Mandatory quarterly audits with third-party oversight, anonymous whistleblower channels with guaranteed legal protection, and a rotating ethics committee with cross-departmental representation. It was radical, and it was necessary. Later that afternoon, Maya met privately with Veronica in her office. Veronica closed the door and offered her a seat. You've changed the rhythm of this place, Maya. People talk differently now. They listen. I didn't do it alone. No, Veronica admitted. But you were the match. And now you need to decide what kind of fire you want to light next. Maya exhaled. The sheikh offered me a permanent role, strategic ethics advisor. Veronica raised an eyebrow. And? I haven't decided. Because? Because staying means committing to a system I've only just started to trust, and leaving means walking away from the work that matters. Veronica leaned back. You know what I think? I think the system's only as honest as the people willing to stay and fix it. And you're honest. That evening, Maya took the subway to Brooklyn, to a community center where she used to volunteer. She hadn't been back in years. The center looked nearly the same, peeling paint, loud kids, metal chairs in the foyer, but the energy was familiar. She found Mr. Duncan, the retired teacher who once ran after-school programs there. Maya? He asked, adjusting his glasses. Hi, Mr. Duncan. It's been a while. You look like someone who's been fighting dragons. Maybe just their accountants. He laughed, a deep, crackling sound. Still sharp. Come in. They sat in his small office where walls were lined with old photos of students and volunteers. Maya explained what had happened, the whistleblowing, the contracts, the stolen funds meant for tribal communities. When she finished, Duncan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You remind me of your father. You know that? He never raised his voice unless it was for someone else. Maya looked down. I just wish he could see it. Oh, I think he does. As she left the center, Maya paused by the wall near the exit. There was an old photo from 20 years ago. A group of volunteers with fists raised in front of a mural. There, on the far right, was a teenage Maya beside her father, both grinning wide. She smiled. Some legacies didn't need monuments. Back at her apartment that night, Maya finally opened the envelope the sheikh had given her. The offer was generous, more than she had ever imagined earning. But it wasn't the money that struck her. It was the letter inside, handwritten. Miss Williams, in the stories my grandfather told me, justice was always slow but inevitable. He said, "The ones who light candles in dark rooms are the ones we remember. You lit a candle here. Stay, help us keep it burning. Hush, son." The next morning, Maya walked into the sheikh's office before the board convened. He looked up from his desk, surprised but calm. "I accept," she said. His eyes twinkled. "Then let us begin." At the meeting that followed, Maya was introduced not just as an advisor, but as a permanent voice on the strategic ethics panel, a role created in her name. Applause followed, not thunderous, but sincere. Even some who once doubted her nodded with respect. And when the meeting closed, and everyone filtered out into the hallways of marble and glass, Maya stayed behind. She looked at the empty boardroom, the place where lies had once sat dressed in suits and silk, and smiled. There was still so much work to do. But for once, power was on the side of truth. Maya Williams stepped back into the grand lobby of the Empire Grand Hotel with a sense of quiet purpose. Gone was the staff lanyard that once defined her, now replaced by a badge identifying her as Strategic Ethics Advisor for Al Rashid Capital's American operations. She paused beneath the crystal chandelier, breathing in the mingled scent of fresh flowers and polished marble. Every detail of this place bore witness to her journey from carrying trays to shaping policy, and she carried the weight of that transformation with gratitude. "Ms. Williams," a familiar voice called. It was Carmen, the housekeeper who'd cheered Maya on from day one. She stood near the concierge desk, holding a small wrapped gift. When their eyes met, Carmen's broad grin lit up her warm face. "You did it," Carmen said simply, handing over the package. It was a delicate wooden jewelry box, scented faintly of sandalwood. "Carmen, open it," she urged. "You've earned it." Maya lifted the lid. Inside lay a brass token etched with the words, "Voice of Integrity," encircled by Arabic calligraphy. Caught between surprise and emotion, Maya held it close. Carmen reached out and squeezed her hand. "This belongs to you," Carmen said. "From everyone upstairs who says, thank you." Maya swallowed. She'd never thought she'd be honored for stepping forward. But here she was, in a place that had first overlooked her, now revering her courage. That afternoon, she sat in the concierge lounge with Veronica Ellison. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, lighting the steam off their tea. "They're planning a plaque," Veronica whispered. "In the lobby, in your honor." Maya blinked. "A plaque?" Veronica nodded. "Under your brass token, they want the inscription to read, 'Saved by a voice that refused to stay silent.' It'll be visible to every guest who enters." Maya felt a warmth deep in her chest. She pictured travelers, executives, visitors pausing, reading those words, perhaps remembering that it's never too late to speak up. That evening, the construction crew came in quietly. They placed a small brass plaque at the base of the concierge desk. Evening light caught its shine as Maya brushed past on her way out. Her phone buzzed. A message from Amal. "Native communities in Minnesota and Arizona have been informed. They're mobilizing long-term monitoring teams. You started something bigger than us." Maya closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. This wasn't just corporate change. It was real-world justice reaching distant corners, clean water, accountability, broken promises being mended. A week later, Maya attended the public unveiling of the plaque. A small crowd gathered: employees, Gulf partners, journalists, hotel guests. A Gulf board member gave a short speech, voice full of gratitude. Then Veronica invited Maya forward. Cameras clicked. Microphones caught her smiling face. She cleared her throat. "I don't know what size this plaque is," Maya began, "but I know what size our voices can be, no matter where we come from, no matter what we do. A maid can carry a message. A maid can ask a question. And that's where courage starts." She looked out at the faces, some curious, some emotional. This plaque isn't mine. It belongs to every person here who chooses clarity over convenience, justice over silence, truth over comfort. Let it remind us. When you speak, someone listens. Polite applause turned into genuine ovation. Cameras snapped. The lights reflected off the plaque, casting warm tones across hopeful faces. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Carmen hugged Maya tightly. "You did it,"